Hi, everybody. I wanted to come back and talk to you about what's going on this week, but also the nodal axis shifting. And I will be coming back again and again to talk about the nodes because it's a bigger event than just one change. And to keep in mind that we are in these unusual configurations, astrologically speaking, but that even still things take time to develop, and it's not always what we see in the moment that is actually the big deal, but it is thinking in terms of what is, let's say, instigating the moment, or what is triggering something that then leads to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And the because I'm doing this on the 13th of July, and we're of course very close to the 14th of July, which everyone except the French calls Bastille Day. I wanted to talk about the storming of the Bastille, which is the Bastille was the prison of Paris in the 11th, where you find in the 11th arrondissement in Paris, you'll still find a tribute to the location of where the prison was, but it's all gone now. And it disappeared pretty much during the year or so after this particular event, which was launched against the prison because it was such a symbol of oppression, monarchical oppression. It was originally like the whole thing was a fortress originally designed during the Hundred Years' War with Britain, with England, I guess it is. And so that was like 400 years old by the time this was stormed and destroyed in this first revolutionary act. The revolution kind of began in May, but this was like the peak moment which triggered the whole thing. And it does approach the Jupiter-Pluto opposition. That's why I wanted to tie it in because this week already really now, as we even if we go into last week, but certainly from the 12th until the 20th, 24th, Jupiter and Pluto are really strongly opposing each other. And we can see here on the 14th, this is just after the new moon. I've already done a video on that if you're interested. Just after the new moon. We have this opposition really, really tight now. It's starting to go closer and closer to the 1 degree opposition. And then by a week from now, it's going to be exact. So really the exactitude is on the 20th, but as I say, these are events that are culminating, they're beginning and then they start to fade, but they don't necessarily have to occur in one particular moment on one day. What's really fascinating about this chart of the Bastille, the prison being stormed, and by the way, we romanticize all this revolutionary stuff, right? The French Revolution, the American Revolution is very easy to romanticize with a historical distance, and also because cinema has done that. But 94 people died in this event. It was really bloody, was quite violent. There were only 7 prisoners, so again, it was a symbolic gesture. It was not about releasing like hundreds of prisoners. It was the symbol of injustice. It was a symbol of oppression, and we will see in our own times, in this year, maybe next year again, years coming, that there will be symbols that come crashing down, and this is the typical quality, let's say, of Jupiter opposite Pluto. Now, we've had lots of Jupiter oppositions to Pluto in the intervening years, but this is the last time that Jupiter was in Leo and Pluto was in Aquarius, and that's why this matters. I'm going to just take away the transits for now. This is the chart of 1789, of course, July 14th, which the French call le 14 juillet, but it's, okay, Bastille Day for the rest of the world. And so here we have this really interesting configuration, which is being recalled by so many other things that are coming through now. And sorry, there's something moving here. It's just my blind. It's either I have a choice between too much light or almost pitch blackness, and then the wind comes in and moves the thing around. But if I don't have the window open, I suffocate. So bear with me if you're hearing funny sounds or if you're seeing strange things moving. It's my blinds. So what I wanted to point out was just a few things that are really relevant to our situation right now. One of which is that we have this Uranus with Venus now. Today, as I'm doing this, Venus is at 4 degrees on the 13th of July. She's at 4 degrees of Virgo, and that pulls into a number of other configurations, which is part of July. Remember the 4 degree significance of this moment. But here we have the 4 degrees where Jupiter is right now, where it's going to approach exactly in 1 week. And that's quite interesting because these events are triggering always if charts never really go away. The chart, like a natal chart, is going to be reactivated with all kinds of transits, including in the distant future. And we can see how events sort of rhyme as we go through history. Now, the nodal axis is not at all where it is today. It's just I found it very interesting because as we get through a few months after this event, the south node is on Algol. And notice that this is Algol. It's not at the 26-degree point where we find the south node on that day, as it is today, because the fixed stars, they move very, very slowly, and Algol at this point is at 23 degrees of Taurus. But you know, by the time they are, let's say, getting the assembly together to organize the Declaration of Rights, human rights, that is where the South Node is moving into 3 months later, 3 months later. So it's interesting in and of itself. That's why I put Algol there. And also because I knew in the comments I would get people saying, "Oh, it's not Algol." It's not Algol. So the Algol is wherever it is on that day, and Algol requires a 2 degree 10 arc minute of a degree orb for a conjunction. Or is it two? Yeah, anyway, it's around 2.5 degrees, let's say. So it's never by opposition, square, etc. It's fixed stars are by conjunction only. And it's significant because at this point, the nodal axis is also really, activating again this approach. Let's say activating the fixed star Algol, which is always where things start to get curious and ugly in terms of military or violent, actions. Um, and especially with the reference to the decapitation, which is carrying the story of Medusa and so on. It's all the more literal during the French Revolution because this was also at the time that a fellow called Guillotine invented this killing machine and created this more efficient way of killing people. So execution is a big part of this, and it's really important to keep that in mind because it's, like I said, easy to romanticize these periods of time. They were pretty gruesome and pretty ugly times. So, 3, 4 years later, we enter what is the period known as the Reign of Terror. And so there's one thing to have the trigger, but then there's this extreme reaction to events, a reaction to an extreme, and then the extreme reaction on the other side. And then that continues. And keeping in mind, we're in 1789 here in this Jupiter-Pluto opposition, which can, in many ways, mirror what's going on today. But it's all of this to get rid of the absolute monarch, who, as Louis says, Louis the 16th at that time, um, who was then executed in like the next year. No, three years down the road, I think 1792. So it does take a while to get rid of the culprits. But again, then in 1799, so 10 years later, they get Napoleon. So just to keep in mind, it's like look out, beware of trapping yourself in the idea that there's going to be like quick and easy Hollywood-style interventions and solutions to problems that have been fomenting for decades, if not centuries. And we will be taking decades, if not centuries, to extract ourselves from these situations too. Again, just to say, I wanted to point out here how many of the things that are going on. So here I'm going to pull up today. This is the 13th of July as I'm doing this video. Jupiter is approaching the 3rd degree, so it's just approaching the conjunction as I say that happens. Around the 20th exact in opposition to Pluto, which is already in opposition to the Uranus and Venus, which already has been, by the way, in the earlier part of this year, because now Pluto is retrograding back. And notice that at the time of this Bastille Day, Bastille Day, the 14 juillet, we have a retrograde Pluto as well. And by the time we get, in fact, to the, hang on, I just pulled that up here, the Jupiter opposition. Hang on, I've got the wrong date there. Jupiter opposition, there it is. Yes, I put 1798. It is absolutely the 1799. I just want to make that correction to make sure everybody's 1789. inverted. Okay, there we go. And so what we have here, 1789, this is the opposition. It was the 2nd of September. But keeping in mind that these events have extended warranties, extended effects, where you have this effect that lasts. And remember, we're still in the impact of the conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto from 2020. This is the call and response to that 2020 conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius 2020. And now we're getting the opposition as Jupiter moves into Leo and moves into the opposition phase. But it's not like it's going to be 1 week and then it's all sorted. It's an energetic phase. And this is what I'm trying to explain here in terms of this period. It's 2.5 months later. Sorry, no, not even. It's 6 weeks later, basically, 6, 7 weeks maybe, after this particular event. But the pressure that's building, we are already in. If you think about it, like us since the month of May, that's the pressure. So when did no, since end of June, when Jupiter moved in, the 30th of June, when Jupiter moved into Leo, that's us now, and already in the pressure zone, which continues for a little while. So it's a very interesting thing to compare. It's comparing to a certain degree apples and oranges. It's not exactly the same thing, but it rhymes quite a lot. And here, what we have in this, let's say, configuration are a number of triggers which we can see repeated as we go into the. So this was the exact opposition. And again, remembering faster moving planets like Mercury and the Moon, even Venus to a certain extent, and Mars will always trigger events that are begun at times of major conjunctions, squares, or oppositions by the outer planets. And then the faster moving planets come in and they light the fuse, as it were, and here's a fuse being lit for the extended period of major change. And this is what brings the major change going forward from 1789. So although a lot of historical focus and glamour and romance around the storming of the Bastille is on the 14th of July, it's more, think of it as a symbol. And so look around today at what are the symbols of things that are happening now that are actually not necessarily the main event, but symbolically beginning something. And again, we're now 1 week again into war with Iran as the US has gone back to military operation. So here we have Venus 4 degrees in a hang on, I've got to take away the Bastille chart because otherwise I'll get them messed up. Here we go. So Jupiter still squaring Chiron. Venus is very tightly today. It'll perfect today, squaring Uranus. And then Regulus, now we've got the South Node as we go into the 14th and into the 15th. This week, the South Node is on Regulus. Keeping in mind, Regulus represents the regal one, the king. It is in the constellation of the Lion, Leo, but it is in 0 degrees of tropical Virgo. And that's something to notice. It's been there for the last 15 years or so. And it just shifted from, it was 29 Leo for decades because it moved so slowly. And it's here at 0 degrees of tropical Virgo for the last about 15 years. And that's significant because that's where we are with the nodes. And that's what I've come here actually to talk to you about, just because of the historical import of the revolutionary times that we are in and that we remember through history, some of us, or at least through film and teledramas, or what do they call those, period dramas. We remember these historical events, if not correctly, but at least we remember them. And so here we're still in this notion of Mars in Gemini, of course, this issue of war, fratricide, and this is certainly what was going on in the French Revolution, and the U.S. Also with their revolutionary times, similar kind of dynamic. And if I come back to that time, just to point out again, there was a Mercury cazimi. I'm just stepping out of the cazimi. That was the 12th of July. And we're coming into the new moon phase, which is the 14th of July tomorrow, which will be when the sun, of course, comes back to the degree point of that chart. It doesn't always line up, by the way. The calendar does not always align up with the solar degree. So a solar return may happen on a day that is different. It can be before or after the actual birthday, let's say, or event day. It just so happens it does align this year. So we've got the sun then moving into alignment with the solar return of the revolution at the same time as there's a Kazemi. And here, this was the hours before a Kazemi at the time of the storming of the Bastille. It's just interesting rhyming again with the features of that event. And here we have again as a trigger event, we've got Saturn that will back over the moon of that event as well. And again the feature of the coincidence here of the Mars triggering the Mars return of that, which again was last week, and we're in it. You know, my daughter lives in Paris, and I was speaking to her the other day, and she was saying that the recent legislation, I think maybe as recent as like Thursday, Friday of this week, last week, has given the French police the power to shoot first and ask questions later, where up until this time, at least judicially, there was a restraint on that, that they would have to have good cause to shoot. And now it's like, yeah, go for it and just shoot, and we'll figure it out as we go. Of course, meaning that there's now going to be this almost like wild, wild west going on in France at this point. And then we also have pretty much the same time. So I think like Thursday, Friday in Germany now, a law which has decreed that you can get 5 years of prison for example, saying that you don't think that Israel has a right to exist. Now, there's already sentencing, there's already huge restrictions on anyone who says that the Israeli government is causing genocide, or if there is any opposition to the Israeli government, the German legal system will take action against you. And this is Germany, not Israel. So just to say, this is where we are. And this is the level of oppression that we're working through, also coming through this kind of congestion, this oppression that is building to a particular point. And we're going to get to that point as we come in the year or 3, 4 years ahead. And especially when Jupiter comes around to meet Pluto in the sky again, 2033. It's actually not far off where Pluto is in this particular chart as well. Right, where are we going with this? Yes, so we're going to come away from this chart. I don't want to dwell on it. I just wanted to point out some of these things that are coming, because this is baked in to the nodal shift that we're having. So the nodal shift doesn't sort of start and stop at a particular time. It's also a continuum of events. And we also find events that are very similar in terms of um, going back in time to the previous time that we had this nodal axis. And here I forgot to make the chart for that, so I'm going to quickly make one up here as I edit this chart. We're going to look at, I'm going to call it November 2007 because I can't remember exactly the date. Okay, we're way too far. So I think it was the end of the year 2007, and notice that the nodes are shifting roughly where we are here. This is, of course, the beginning of the beginning of the financial crisis. Just let me go back a few days here and I'll get that. And this is where we are. So 17th of December, 2007. And we move into this nodal axis that we are here. Now, remember today, 13th of July through the next week, we've got the South Node on Regulus, but 0 degrees of Mercury ruled Virgo. And in that particular chart, the 18th of December 2007, the South Node crosses Regulus at 29 of almost the very last degree, 2956 of Leo. So this is interesting also to keep in mind because we're looking at that dynamic of the Jupiter-Pluto opposition overall, which is, again, in this particular configuration, now the conjunction, this was one of the conjunction points. Jupiter was earlier, just a couple of weeks before, in a couple of days before, rather, in its perfected conjunction with Pluto, and um, and that is again part of the cycle we had in 2020. And now we're coming into the opposition, but this was when the nodes shifted the last time. I'm just trying to give you the magnitude of the effects of things. This is where that happened the last time the nodes shifted. So let's come back to today because we want to talk about what's coming up here. And what I'm going to do is just move forward to the 27th, which is when we get this nodal shift. And this nodal shift is going to last until March of 2028, I think it is. So hang on. There we go. So the 27th. So you see 26th, and we'll go over, in some cases, for some of you, it will be on the 26th. Like if you're east of Europe, it's already on the 26th. If you are in the North America or South America, it will not be until the 27th that it's actually exact. Anyway, let's call it the 27th. This is where we are now. And so we've done the conjunction of K2 or the South Node with Regulus. Now what we're having as the node comes in, just as that's coming in, the South Node, keep in mind, is about letting go. It's about releasing. It's about something that is done. We're moving away from it and we're moving into something different. And because we're also working on the basis of this Jupiter opposition, to Pluto, in the symbolism of that, it's like the power in opposition to the people. Equally, we could describe it as money in opposition to dispersion of wealth or sharing the wealth. That's Aquarian as well. Political ideology, that's Aquarius, and power or single concentrated rulership. That's Leo. So we're working on the same basis, but now we're blending the significance of the South and North Node with the Pluto, the Jupiter-Pluto opposition, with the ruler of Leo moving in. So we now have a conjunction forming at the same time between the Sun and Jupiter, which is exact on the 29th, and that is at 6 degrees. So if we just move a little bit ahead, we see that exact conjunction at 6 degrees. That is the full moon, which I will do in a separate video because we end up with way too many things going on in one video. And so that full moon is going to be the trigger. Remember, as I was showing you, the faster moving planets will come through and trigger events. And these will be the trigger events as the lunation comes through. And that will be when I can provide you also the dates of the lunations that have come before, because for a year and a half we've been building to this point. And then for a year and a half, we'll be moving into let's say, the results of this particular cycle. And I'll give you those dates based on the lunar families. And and here what we also have at this is the Venus in a square to Mars. Now, I'm not going to dwell on that in terms of the nodal axis, but in terms of the tension that is about rulers and people, and what you could also describe as a concentration of wealth and power, which is the Leo Jupiter, and the Pluto Aquarius dynamic of social control, because Pluto also is about control. Jupiter is about the appearance or the abundance or the sense of, let's say, the visible power. Pluto is the power beneath the power, or the power behind the throne, or the power that is true, the absolute power. And there we have this dynamic in Aquarius, which is also about trying to control people, trying to control all the internet, financial systems, all the systems which are represented by Aquarius. And again, we're going to find this later in the month as it's coming through as a kind of a trigger to start something in a new dynamic, in a completely different dynamic. Right. All right. So I'm not going to dwell on that. As I said, I'm here for the nodal axis. So let me come back to this moment. Oh, I didn't mean to do that, did I? I want to go back to the 27th. Let me get to that 27th, just so we have the nodes. There we go. In the signs. And so what we're looking at when we look at Leo and Aquarius, what we can see in terms of the South Node, which is really considered in Indian astrology to be the most spiritual placement in the entire they call them planets, and they're like shadow planets. They're the mysterious points in the zodiac which cause eclipses. They still have that impact on transit, and certainly in the natal chart, they have an import which will be much more, let's say, in depth or serious in terms of the natal chart than what I'm describing here by transit. But keep in mind that they are significant points, even though they're invisible. They're like a causation. They cause things to happen, and when they come in touch with other planets, and especially the Sun and the Moon, which are considered the North and South Node, or Rahu Ketu, are considered the enemies of the Sun and the Moon, the luminaries, because they block the light of the luminaries when they come close to them. And that's where we get eclipses, lunar or solar, which we will have, by the way, for the first time in Leo at 19 degrees, almost 20 degrees of Leo on the 12th of August. That's another video. And so all of this is happening. You see, all of it is all part of this dynamic. And the South Node being highly spiritual in the sign of self, in the sign of self-expression, in the sign of joy and expression of oneself, is really asking us to come back to this purity of expression as opposed to the false expression. Now, if we extrapolate that to mean the rulers, the leaders, the actors on the stage that appear as the rulers, the leaders, etc., of countries or companies for that matter. Everybody thinks somebody like Elon Musk is some like self-starting Wonder Boy, forgetting and or maybe not realizing that he was completely sponsored by DARPA and put there in so many ways, just like Peter Thiel or Mark Zuckerberg or anybody else. They're the product of the military industrial complex and their security state. And then they're shown, the facade is, look at this amazing mythological creature that appears like Wonder Boy to save the world. And so this is where I think all of this facade is going to start to crumble in the same way as what we had, perhaps in a much more shocking or sudden way than what was having, well, I say we, but what was going on in the French Revolutionary times, or for that matter, the American Revolutionary times, which were earlier, but similar kind of changes happening around this time. Shedding monarchy, which is very Leo, shedding those absolute monarchs, shedding the appearance of perfection or godlike creatures like the French monarchy, or even the British monarchy, who until very, very recently would still basically say that they were put there by God, the God-given right to breed and continue to occupy the throne of the UK, for example, or anywhere else. It could be any monarch, any leader, any ruler. This will be something that we're going to see completely flipping the script around who is your daddy, who's your daddy. And now you can think about that as we take that into a personal experience, this K2 through Leo. I'll go house by house and sign by sign. It is going to be it is going to be an opportunity for us to look at, where are we giving our power away? Where are we living in this kind of false expectation of somebody there benevolently guiding us through life? And where have we given up our responsibility? Where are we not showing up fully in our life? And what we want to get away from is this kind of comic book fake astrology archetype of Leo being this egotistical buffoon, like this kind of big puffed up thing. The ego plays tricks in a lot of different ways. Like a lot of the Leos that I work with, as I see people coming through with this big Leo story, and they'll say, I don't know what this Leo thing is all about, because that's not how I feel. That's still the ego, but it's the ego that says I'm insignificant. I'm in this tiny box. I'm in this little container. It's still an egoic situation, which is always going to be a dilemma that Leo is going to need to examine. It's just not that, big in your face kind of expression of the sort of Hollywood glitz and glamour of the sort of Leo archetype of fame, or especially celebrity, which is another thing I think is going to be completely inverted. We will no longer be seeing that kind of thing. If you think about the post-war, in the post-Second World War phase, I think it was 1950, 49, 50, maybe 50, 51, maybe, there was an inversion of this. So we had Pluto in Leo, and then we had Jupiter in Aquarius. And we could really point to that as a major spark of celebrity, which again itself is like a psyop. It's also part of the way that we are being controlled by being told to look over here while things are actually happening over there. So I just want you to keep all of those notions in mind as we go through this year and a half of a journey of real reflection on leadership. How do I lead my own life? What is the thing that I'm referencing when I'm leading my own life? And am I able to abstract from my personal, I'm going to say selfish, but I don't necessarily mean that in an accusatory way, but my self-centered or my own like little tiny world, my little problems. And can I see that in this North Node, Rahu in Aquarius way, I fit in always naturally to a bigger environment. I fit in to this social environment. And in that spiritual sense of let's say, the highest use of K2, which is where we can let go of this defensive armor, let's say, of the ego or the sense of identity, the sense of specialness, like I'm special, I need special attention, I need special service, I need special, I don't know, whatever. I need to be prioritized in everybody else's movie. This is going to be falling away. We will run out of patience for that, for those who haven't already. And that North Node in Aquarius is, this whole thing with Leo and Aquarius. I've done many videos on this in the past, where a lot of that dynamic of Leo Aquarius is about coming to this place that you could describe as stoicism. Aquarius has that wonderfully stoic way of looking at life, which is, okay, this is what's happening. This is the situation. Now, what do I do with that? As opposed to the melodrama that can come through Leo, the sort of exaggerated, woe is me. What about me? How will this impact me? It's like, no, there's a bigger story going on here, and it's also part of saving my own skin. But it really does matter what's happening to all of us. And when I say all of us, I don't mean people in your neighborhood. I mean all of us on this planet, and how people are being sort of casually eliminated, um, almost like a news item. People kind of scrolling through stories of actual obliteration of cultures and societies, generations. And this is where it gets very close to home, and it gets to be something that we really need to look at, both financially, as I said. The Leo Aquarius axis can also represent the money story in terms of power. Who's got the money because of that Pluto Jupiter that is coinciding with the lunar nodes being in this area of the chart as well. It's all the more reinforced because the sun is now with Jupiter at this time. Again, the sun is ruling Leo. In a general sense, maybe it's a good time to add that for you, in your natal chart, it's important to understand the condition of your natal sun, where it is, and how it's impacting Leo. So where it is by sign and how it's impacting the sign of Leo. Is it in good condition? Is it something that is starved by Saturn? Is it in a whatever, a trine, or is it in a square? It's going to impact you differently. And that is always going to be true as long as the South Node is in Leo. We need to look at the sun, even by transit. Where's the sun? That's going to bring the feeling of what's going on with the South Node in Leo. In the same way, Saturn has been governing Pluto and now the North Node as it's in Aquarius. And because Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius, I don't work with modern planets. The modern outer planets don't really work in terms of rulership. They are hugely impactful, but not good as a reference in terms of rulership. In that case, we look to not only Saturn, but because it's in Aries, we need to find where our friend Mars is. So in this case, we've got Mars in Gemini, again, not a very comfortable place for Mars to be, and it is ruled by this Mercury. So that will be the flavor that we're coming back to when we look at what's going on in Aquarius, you see. And Mercury itself is depending on the moon. In this particular example, the moon is in detriment here in Capricorn. which relies once again on Saturn. So these are heavy Saturnian dense energies. We can sum that up as in that chain, let's say, of ownership or chain of rulership. These are dense and heavy energies that are also connected to Mars, which means something military, something that is being ruptured. Now, in the Indian way of looking at the nodes, Ketu, the south node, has the quality of Mars. It's a quality of separation, of letting go, of severing, of releasing, and that can be very welcome. Think about, taking out the rubbish in your home. You want to be separated from your garbage, right? You want to wrap it up nicely, put it outside, and it's gone. We're separating ourselves out from that. So think of that as both, a helpful thing as well as things that may be difficult to release and let go of. And then when we think of the North Node, the energy of the North Node in the Indian way of looking at that is Saturnian. It's going to teach you something. It's a lesson you cannot avoid. It's going to be something that is unavoidably important. And here we have it in Aquarius. And that energy of Aquarius, of course, is all about our social constructs. So I've spoken a lot about this in the last 3 years since Pluto moved into the fifth house. I have a lot of videos about Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. Again, if you're American and interested in that stuff, if you haven't seen it, I've done lots of videos about America, let's say United States, because I know it's not really, it doesn't represent America. It's the United States of America, but I've done a lot of that. Most of it in 2023, some of it in the end of 2022, and again in 2024, when we were really looking at the US Pluto return very closely. It will carry a lot of the same messaging as what I'm doing here in terms of Aquarius, because lo and behold, the North Node is moving in with Pluto. I'm not going to do these conjunctions. I'm not going to talk about November's and then again next April's conjunction with the South Node Jupiter and then including Mars with that, because that merits a separate video. And the same when we get to November 2027, when Pluto and the North Node are conjoining, and I think that's on 8 degrees, 9 degrees of Aquarius. But I will do separate videos for those because they really do merit a very close study. But just know that these next 2 years are going to be incredibly eventful because of the emphasis of the nodal axis in this place of a fixed sign, which is also going to be much more difficult, let's say, to change. We've now had a year and a half of the nodal axis in mutable signs. We had the North Node in Pisces, the South Node in Virgo. Those are mutable signs. And change is a lot more flowy, much easier. People who are mutable, the energy of mutability, which is again Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, those people are used to change. The flux and vibe of, life ebbing and flowing, it's just part of their vocabulary, part of their everyday experience. It's not true for the fixed signs, Taurus and Leo and Scorpio and Aquarius. That's not true because there is a resistance to change. And this is why things go to extremes before the change happens. And again, we can look at that dynamic of the Jupiter-Pluto opposition, which it doesn't define the revolution because there again we have a number of different aspects that are important to look at. Again, so many different things it's not just that one thing, but we're pulling a lot of strings together at this time in this area of the fixity of what it means to rule and have control and what it means to be ruled and be controlled. And this is where the pressure is building. Um, yeah, so I'm going to come back and talk a lot about these things because this is our background now from the end of July all the way through till March of 2028. Uh, March or I think it's even April 2028. I forgot to check that. I'll put it in the description box below. Anyway, so 18 months, we've got this situation. It's going to be the backdrop of our lives. And as we go through this, the whole question, the whole thing to look at is how am I able to shed a small, isolated sense of self in that K2 way, in that South Node way, recognizing the truth of myself, shedding an image of self, shedding the whole outer accoutrement, the whole outer sense of being me, the Instagram version, let's say. How can I shed that to come to the essence of my self-expression? and what it means to be human. Remember, this is also the energy and the Jupiter-Pluto opposition, where the Declaration of the Rights of, les droits de l'homme, it was rights of man was expressed, which is very similar to the Declaration of Human or the Declaration of Independence. It was all done at around the same time. And this is the energy of that. What does it mean to be a man in society? What does it mean to be ruled? What does it mean to be the ruler? Who's your daddy? That's the question. Put it on your fridge. Who's your daddy? And keep noticing that this notion of like who owns me, who manipulates me, who is using me for their ends. This is a really important thing, whether it be in your individual story or in the collective story. How am I being bamboozled or used for somebody else's power games? And again, a lot of things are going to be revealed in so many different ways that are going to be sometimes a hard and bitter pill to swallow, hard lesson, because the Leo image of self can be the obstacle to awakening. It's the image that is the last thing to drop. The egoic self is the hardest nut to crack. And my image, who I think I'm an American. And that flag represents this thing to me, and I worship it every morning or whatever. I think I am British, or I think of myself as French. These are the outer shells that can be so blinding that it requires some kind of brute force event to shed that image. And this is where we come to the North Node in Aquarius, because Aquarius is about finding one's identity within the collective. And that's why the sun is weakened in Aquarius. It's in its rulership in Leo. When the sun goes to the opposite sign, it's not just about seasons. It's important to understand that, because on the one hand, we can explain a lot about astrology through the seasonal movement of the sun, because especially with tropical astrology, that is part of what it's founded on, but it's not the whole story. The deeper story is that the meaning of Aquarius, and that we see by derived houses, which is something I'm making available on my website soon, so you can learn what the signs mean by derived houses. The inherent meaning doesn't matter if you're in the South Pole or the North Pole, the meaning is there regardless of seasons. That Aquarius represents the collective. It represents this is me in the terms of collective, and therefore the identity, which is the sun, the sense of self, which is coming through the consciousness of this is my life, this is my purpose, is necessarily dissipated. It's somehow weakened in the sign of Aquarius. And that's often where you get actually this very strong egoic energy that comes through Aquarius. And that's the paradox, the irony, which is that this feeling of I'm all about the collective actually is coming through a look at me, how different I am to everyone, which is actually the egoic story. So same thing from a different perspective. And so this is the same paradox, whether it's about Aquarius or Leo. The question is, how do I identify as me? How do I identify myself in a similar fashion, but not exactly the same? We have the Aries and Libra dyad, but that is much more about the dynamic of relationship to individuals, my individual self in relationship to the other. Um, and then when we look at the Leo versus Aquarius, it's much more about how do I fit in to a collective? How do I fit into an identity that other people share? And that's what makes the difference. It's not just the other, it's not just the me we, but it's actually the me in the context of us, all of us, like this group and this ideology, this political belief, this nationhood, etc. Those are all the Aquarian ideals, the Aquarian principles. So we're going to be juggling with this now for a year and a half. And the part of this that's going to be really loud is this year, this July, where there is an exact opposition from Jupiter to Pluto, but sign-based opposition from Jupiter to Pluto continues as we go well into the end of July of 2027. So this is, basically the first year of a year and a half journey of the nodes is going to contain the Jupiter and Pluto opposition. And that question will continue to churn, even if the peak of it has happened already. It's going to be, again, a launch pad. Think of it as the event chart that launches the theme of this question of what does it mean to rule or be ruled? What does it mean to be told what to do? or to be obedient or to be disobedient, what is coming through this moment in time. And it will, because of that very strong impulse, that very strong um, the cyclical memory of the nodal axis being in Leo and the South Node in Leo, North Node in Aquarius, we know that finances are part of this story. Every time this axis is awakened, we had the same in 89, 90, and the same energy of economic collapse and financial collapse. It's part of that story. So keep in mind, these are bigger cycles that we are participating in. So those bigger cycles are always teaching us something. And the Aquarian cycle is very strong because we had the Pluto conjunction with Saturn, 2020, Pluto, Saturn, Mars, 2020, Pluto, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, like they were all coming together, coming and going throughout 2020. And then the great conjunction, the traditional way of measuring the bigger cycles, was on the winter solstice or the December solstice of 2020, 21st of December, when Saturn and Jupiter came together. And we're going to come up to a trine from that point, as we get to the end of August, eclipse 28th of August, but actually perfecting on the 31st of August or the 1st of September. But again, we still have it a week on either side, basically, at about 12, 13 degrees of Leo to Aries. And that trine is a new way of relating to that dynamic of the grand conjunction that happened December 2020. So what we're doing here is coming back again and again to 2020. And in many cases, many other older cycles, but let's at least grapple with the last 6 years. It's been like lifetimes in 6 years. So this is, I think, the most pragmatic way of looking at this moment in time. Where are we now with reference to what controls us? Because the Saturnian energy of this cycle is the most powerful. Saturn rules Aquarius and was at 0 degrees of Aquarius when it met with Jupiter, right? And then that was where we find the movement of Pluto as on the 23rd of March, 2023. Pluto went into that 0 degree point, but it was throughout 2020 when Saturn in Capricorn, its sign, met up with Pluto, met up with Jupiter, and imprinted that Capricornian Saturnian energy, and then again imprinted that energy in Aquarius as we evolved through the Saturn and Aquarius era. So there's a lot that we have to understand is very Saturnian, and that Saturnian energy this is karmic. This is the Lord of Karma, and this doesn't mean that not everything else in the chart is karmic, but this is karmic. It's the energy of karma. I'll do a clip from one of my courses just to talk about the different stages of karma and how we can see karma, because I think a lot of people still confuse karma with punishment. It's simple consequences. It's consequences of all the different things that have led us to this particular point. It's your karma to be listening to me in this moment. It's my karma that you're here listening. You see, this is also what is just happening in this moment when things come together and they arise and the conditions are right. There will be a condition that emerges as an event, and then when the conditions are no longer ripe, that falls away. That event is no longer ripe, and that's Saturn. And so this is the moment that we're in as a flavor of our times. It's Saturnian. And in the context of this now, we're questioning control, issues of control, which is very Saturnian, but with reference now to who leads us, who gets to be the boss, and what does it mean, and how did they get there? I'll give you 15 different examples of leaders that we think have been elected or that we think have been put through their own wisdom and, whiz kid skills, that they got to the top of this particular, whatever, social media company or banking company or PayPal or you name it. They were put there. They were filtered. They were funneled into the position based on military technology and especially security technology that has been in the works for decades. And we're in the consequences of all of that as well at this particular time. And so these are things you can mull over in terms of the collective impact of our times and our role in it. And then if we come back to the personal story, which we'll refine as we go house by house, there is a lot to reflect on in terms of the notion of, where am I in my journey to understanding who I am? And where do I put myself? Am I putting myself like underneath the boot of this powerful entity that I look to for governance? Because I don't see my own capacity to make decisions and put all of my decision-making capacity outside of me, or I put my awareness of power outside of me. We're trained to do that by education and even by the way that parents, in many cases, educate their children. We're trained to be submissive. We're trained to be expecting somebody will sort that out. And that can feel really liberating because it's not my problem. I don't care, whatever. Not my problem if the streets are dirty, not my problem if whatever. But the thing is that there is a lot of freedom in discipline. This is one of the things about a practice like martial arts or yoga. Or these disciplines, they require discipline and personal commitment to find yourself the freedom, because the freedom is actually coming from the identification with self and the identification with hierarchy that is implied in an identification with self. So there we are. This is the Pluto opposition to now by both the Sun and Jupiter at the time that the nodal axis shifts. And then this becomes our sort of wallpaper for the next year and a half, as we will be in this atmosphere for a year and a half, grappling with these questions on an individual scale and a collective scale. It's a new vision for society. So Leo also represents, in many ways, children, the abundance of children and the beauty and the harmony and the joy and the fun and the expression and so on. But children per se are Leo. And we can also look at that in terms of bigger social issues, like the reduction in reproductive rates, and even the fact that this is happening because of issues that are coming from our environment, which is very Aquarian in terms of pollution, in terms of like PFAS, or like whatever kind of synthetic product we use, or any kind of shampoo, let alone all those shampoos that you find in your grocery store, unless it's like smaller companies that are specifically organic, you have so many chemicals in that thing that you're putting directly on your scalp right next to your brain, going directly into your blood system. Those are the things that are impacting our fertility. They're impacting our capacity to regenerate healthy children. This is also going to be coming to a head. It's been there for ages. It's been there for a very long time. This is coming to a head. Population decline is a massive issue. And we do also have these psychopathic rulers who think that's a great idea. And that has also been a very major issue for centuries, for a long, long time now. This eugenics movement has been a really important one, really since the mid-19th century. And it's important not to pretend that that's some kind of like historical thing. It's a very, very alive and thriving belief that we can see in action through a lot of the events that are happening in our times now. Baked into this nodal shift is this famous basket configuration. It's again outside of France, very famous, and not called a basket or a cradle in terms of the André Barbeau and French astrologers, who really are focusing on the configuration as a trine and the two sextiles, and that is what they call a bisextile in French, the bisextile. This is the emphasis of this time that is triggered again in this formation. If we look at it here, if you follow the red line opposite from Jupiter, Sun to Pluto, and we see the sextile to Neptune, the trine back to Jupiter and the Sun, we see the sextile to Uranus, and the trine back to Pluto, and then the sextile here between Uranus and Neptune. That I've done another video on that basket configuration, and you will see me break that down as well, sign by sign too. And that again, we will keep talking about because it repeats, and not this whole formation, but any time anything comes to trigger the degrees of those aspects, which perfect again next year, 2027 at 6 degree, and then so on into 8, 9 degrees, and so on for the next few years. But this is the, let's say, the loudest moment, with many people in the comments have asked, like, what's the big deal here? Why, if this is happening again and again, is this very important? It is important because we have Jupiter, which is traditionally considered an outer planet. Jupiter, Saturn are the two original, the OG outer planets. They are conjoining, or they're, let's say, configuring themselves into the bigger story of this configuration of modern outer planets. Again, in the time of the French Revolution, we had only just the very novel discovery of Uranus around that same time. And that's also baked into the revolutionary theme of Uranus. At that point, people did not know about Neptune, and they certainly didn't know about Pluto or Eris or any of the Eris was only discovered in 2005. But she gets a lot of time, to show herself as well. There's a lot of activity around Eris that is also part of this time, just not specific to this moment in time, all of which are disruptive energies for big change, for lasting change. Saturn on its own is very much so. Um, right. So I'm going to take away a few things because otherwise I get distracted and I start reading the chart like a natal chart, uh, and just putting too much detail in there. I'm going to take out Eris because she's not specifically configured to this. I'm taking out Black Moon Lilith. Do I need to leave in Mercury? I'm going to have to take out Mercury just to have a clarity of thought here. I'm going to take out Venus. I know that she's squaring Mars, and that's going to be a part of an ongoing story that I'll come back to at the full moon of the 29th of July. And I think that's enough for now. And maybe I'll take out the moon just to save my sanity. And I might even just take out the sun. You've seen the introduction, hopefully, and now you know. So I'm just going to do this as a way of going sign by sign. Oh, look, we're going to take away Chiron and Algo as well. And Regulus as well. Thank you very much. Let's go. And we're going to take out Chiron, and this will not be as big a deal. Can we even take away, look, let's just go for it, and we're going to take away all the other players. You've seen it, you know what's going on. We're just going to leave the big players here, that these are the big, this is a big story for now, okay? And don't worry, I will be coming back again and again and again to this story as it unfolds. Okay, so this is the nodal axis, and again, just for the sake of ease, I will come back to hour by hour to Aries on the ascendant. Will that work? Let's check, because it may actually lose the nodes. Yes, it loses the node, so we're going to have to go forward a day. And there we have. So Aries on the ascendant, Aries sun, moon, and ascendant. So this is all, when we look at the sun, we're looking at you, your purpose, your career, your relationship to men, and especially even your father. And the sun is your conscious awareness of being alive. It's like, oh, this is me. This is who I am. That's your sun. And then the ascendant is how you move through life. It's how you navigate life. This is like how you show up, especially vis-a-vis other people or in terms of your ambitions and so on. The sun is giving you the purpose, and then you show up doing the thing. That's your ascendant. And then the moon is how you feel about all that. It's how you're internalizing life. It's your mind, your psychological self, your emotional self, your mother, your home, all those things. So let's start here for Aries, sun, moon, and ascendant. And for those of you in the comments who keep coming back and saying that only the ascendant matters, you really need to learn more astrology, because you're missing out on about 98% of it. So here what we go through here, that we're going to go through the North Node being now where Pluto has been for 3 years for you in your house of your future. And we've got this North Node pulling your attention into what's coming down the pipeline, but also how do I integrate myself into this social dynamic, let's say. The social dynamic is your immediate circle of people around you. It's not necessarily your intimate friends, but it's groups that you belong to. Um, it will be like casual acquaintances or networks, political or religious groups that you belong to, or like your yoga friends, whatever. People that you do things with, but that you're not like super close to. But it's also how you fit into the social picture. And what we see here with the North Node going through there is that you Actually, we do need Saturn here. Hang on. Let's come back, especially for you, Aries, but let's say for everyone, because Saturn is really part of this story. We need Saturn there. So there we go. So you are specifically tasked with finding a new way of showing up because the South Node is in your fifth house, where Jupiter already is. It's giving you a stronger sense of motivation around self-expression and your creative expression, how you want to reach out into life. It may be quite literally deciding you want to become a parent. Like not only does Saturn rule the North Node and Pluto, but it rules your 10th house of parenting, the role of taking responsibility for something. But that can also be like a business, for example. And here it is, the social agenda of the day. Like, what is it that you want to deal with? Sorry, I just have to stop this clanging sound. Hang on. See if that helps. It does. Hopefully that doesn't affect the lighting too badly, but I need the air. And so here we have this motivation on the one hand to show up and be there and express something of yourself. But the South Node is saying, wait, this is not the important part. And here's the trick. This is the rub. You're going to take it, you're going to have a sense of what your life is all about. And sorry, Aries, but it's not about you. It's not about you, Aries. It's about what you're bringing to life. It's about what you're contributing. It's about what you can do. And it's not about what, feedback you need to hear from people, or it's not about taking the glory. And it's really about being in that pure Aries desire to show up, to be the hero, to be the one that is taking some kind of role of responsibility. We need that more than ever right now. And that South Node going through the fifth house, it's really about saying, well, I'm willing to give up certain aspects of what I thought was like my need to be in a place of, creative happiness or to have fun or to be like the focus of attention and doing only things that were for me. And I'm willing now to show up in a way that others will benefit from how I show up. So you're bringing yourself through. There's nothing that you have to say, like, you're not sacrificing yourself in any way, Aries. It is really about bringing yourself through and recognizing that you're needed and you're part of a bigger picture. And that's how you'll make your biggest contribution in the next year and a half. And here, what we find with the North Node going through the 11th, it can also be about money, finances. That's the house of gains, but it's also who's there for you. And there's a lot of attention on that. So you're going to be building networks and you're going to be building connections with people, which I suspect you've already been doing with Pluto going through the 11th. You may have been the motor behind that. Saturn will have you I'm sure, without exception, you're going to be having moments of huge doubt, doubt around your capacity, doubt around yourself, doubt around your value, etc. But it's when Saturn retrogrades between now and December, you get to realize, oh, I got this. I can do this thing because it's bigger than me. It needs me to show up, but not in that package of look at me. This is in the package of this is what I'm here for. This is why I chose this lifetime to show up. And really, Aries, this is your moment. The energy of Mars, which is your ruler, is showing up in the South Node, going through your fifth house. It's letting you separate from aspects of how you've been in your creative self-expression or even in the way that you create. But it doesn't mean you're not getting it. It means that it's flowing without you having to put a lot of attention on it. South Node also brings through gifts and talents and things that we didn't really appreciate were there, or they're so present that we think it's just normal, but actually it's pretty impressive. And that's what Jupiter is bringing to the surface. Well, the South Node is saying just channel it and bring it out. And this is if you, for example, are, I don't know, connecting on social media or in IRL, in real life, doing things. This is you doing more of that, you see? So this is also part of bringing through what is already there. And again, this depends on your natal chart. It depends on the quality of your sun, especially as an Aries. The sun is your exaltation ruler. Depends on the quality of your Mars because that's your ruler too. And depends on what is being affected in your natal chart. I cannot see that in a general reading like this. But just know that this is not about losing anything that is It's not like not having fun for a year and a half. It means that that's no longer your priority. It means that you're looking at that from a more philosophical or spiritual place and saying, I have so much talent and creativity that I can bring through, but it's not about that. I don't need to be seen for that. And if that's still the case, Saturn will whoop your ass this year. This will be the first whooping, and next year will be the second whooping if you're still on that level of needing attention, as opposed to bringing who you are to the fore and participating, because this is what time is asking you to do right now for the next year and a half. And so just keep this in mind as you go forward in time. There will be other transits which will help you go forward with more ease, and others that will challenge you. And the challenge as we go forward through this year and a half will be about where am I on the level of needing to be seen to be the one, and just getting on with it because that's what I signed up for. That's me being the hero. The hero does not ask for attention. The hero takes that action, does the thing that is within its capabilities to do, and the accolades may come later. And if they don't come, that's also fine. Because a genuine hero is not acting to be seen. They're acting because of right action. They're doing what is necessary in that moment. So this is you quite literally embracing the heroic side of Aries, but coming through because you're here to do the thing, not because you're here to be seen to be doing it. And you can genuinely, without that being your goal, bring something that actually will bring you more attention. And that will be seen over the next year and a half, especially as your chart gets configured around these different things. So keep that in mind. Notice where sometimes your need for acclaim or your need for attention or your need to be special is the obstacle to you achieving something. And get over yourself. And you, especially Aries, will find a role for yourself that you never imagined was possible. And it's a really huge opportunity. So, really brilliant year for you. And I wish you all the best. And I'll see you in the next video. So Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, this is happening in the axis of your, let's say, home or your foundation in life, the feeling of being secure, the feeling of being cozy and comfortable where you are, your connection with the lineage, where the South Node is pulling through a lot of what you've already pulled through the family or what you are dealing with in terms of your family, or your capacity to live and experience your family, and that includes your family currently, the one you've established, but your family of origin, and especially the legacy or the lineage that you've come through, and find a new way of operating through that, that is less and less the motivation of this moment, and bring yourself out into the world, but through all that you've understood about yourself, all that you've understood about what it means to feel secure. Now, Jupiter there makes it a lot easier. And then Pluto on the top of your chart is saying there's a new way of showing up. You have to be out in the world in a different way, or you will find yourself being imposed on by people who are trying to have power over you, trying to control you. Again, notice if the social imperative or a need for approbation or a need to be like to be seen in a particular way is actually the blockage for you to show up in this new way. Your focus will be on either it could be marriage or something to do with your social status. It can be around a career or a vocation. And it can be simply recognizing this is what I'm here for now, but it's not about, again, your comfort or your needs. It's about what you're able to bring through you that balances that with what you need to do. And your focus will be on what you do out in the world. And when I say out in the world, for those of you who keep coming back and saying, I'm retired, I'm not doing anything, that will get off your butt and do something out in the world because it's still part of what you're here for. If your way of acting out in the world is to do less and less, well, that's fine too. But this will be something that you will bring your attention to for the next year and a half. It's where it's not about gainful employment. That's the sixth house. It's not about where you're making money. It's about how you show up. What is your legacy? And what you do in this year and a half is going to be really important in terms of that, how people remember you, how you are seen in your community, in your family, in your company, in your business, in your whatever. This is the thing that you're stepping into right now, but from a foundation of recognizing you have a lot to work with Jupiter there, especially. There's going to be a tension in terms of maybe feeling secure because that's part of your natal story. How do I feel secure? But you will have a new relationship to what you need to feel secure. You'll have a new relationship also to your emotional and psychological self. And there's going to be a part of you that recognizes, oh, there's been patterns here that I need to shed. In that Leo way, there may be a lot of focus or attention on personal need for security or personal need to feel, um, this is all sorted, this is all going to be comfortable. And that's part of the fixed energy here that is challenging you by square, sign square, and then possibly by degree, but that almost extends through the whole sign. So it's only a question of when. And so here what we have is this potential for you to recognize, oh wait, I'm actually okay. If I come back to who I really am, and if I come back to the sort of bare essence of things, I'm actually okay. And I can be out in the world in this different way, in a novel way, in a way that feels like, okay, I'm bringing something to other people, or I'm showing up in a way that other people see me differently. And this is the North Node in the 10th house. You may even literally be becoming a boss or becoming a figure out in the community, or you're becoming a grandparent or a parent, for example. So there's a new way of showing up, and it's in this opposition to what was perhaps a temptation to stay small, to stay in a comfort zone. You're going to be pulled out of your comfort zone so that you can reach out into the world. Again, recognizing where you might be playing small and having the sense of, well, this is all bigger than me. I can't control this. So what's the point? And again, the question is, who's your daddy? Like, who are you giving power to? And where are you not actually stepping up into your own power? We have Saturn in your 12th house. It's there for, a long time. It's been already since mid 2025. It's right there until the middle of April 2028. So it aligns very, very much with the nodal axis. And Saturn is the ruler of your 10th house. It rules your ninth house too, of your sense of purpose. And there it is in the 12th house that may be really showing you where there's certain aspects of yourself that you are not recognizing, but Saturn is going to show you in the next 6 months, particularly until December when it's retrograding, what it is that you're missing in terms of how you're blocking your own progress or how you're blocking your own connection to your maybe what you're aware of that is a sense of needing more, being needy, being not trusting, feeling excluded, feeling marginal. This is all the Saturn 12th house stuff that can be there. And again, that is going to be tested in terms of how you're showing up. And you can show up as very needy. That might also be how you decide to show up in the next year and a half. That would be a shame because it would be a missed opportunity. Look back at 2008, 9, especially from December 2007 through 2008 and the first half of 2009. You will see this is a similar feeling, a similar kind of energy, but more powerful than ever. Um, and then again, when we look at the 12th house, we're looking at the dynamic of things that are far away, people or places or things that are far away from you, or working in a capacity that is hidden, working in a capacity of research, working in a capacity of going abroad, working with foreigners. And that can also be how you're now showing up in your vocation or your career. 12th house can be also more spiritual, and there may be a feeling I'm kind of cut off from what feels like God or what feels like a support for me right now. I'm not really sure that somebody's got my back here. And with Jupiter in the fourth and then the South Node going through the fourth, you're going to feel much more of a sense of it's okay. Things are going to be okay. I'm able to let go. I'm able to let go of this feeling of this need, a visceral three-dimensional need to feel secure. And I recognize as Saturn is going to do its work, as it goes through that 12th house, it's going to be like, oh, I see now. There is something there. It's my ancestors, it's my spirit guides, it's whatever you want to describe it as. Something is there for me. And that builds the strength and the courage that will come through this 12th house dynamic for you. At the same time, that inner sense of strength and self-mastery, which is the Saturn in Aries signature, it's going to bring you to a better place in your everyday life, as then that is what is ruling the 10th house where we find the North Node and Pluto. So Taurus, you want to question any kind of sense that you can't do it, it's too scary, resistance to change. It will be much more painful to resist change, and feel that weakness or feel that sense of inability to act or do the thing that you want. It is simply not recognizing what is the higher truth of who you are and what you're here for. And this is a year for you to really focus on, a year and a half, let's say, not a year, but a year and a half, to focus on what is my personal ambition? What do I want to leave behind? How do I want to be seen by the world? How do I want to be seen and remembered by people? And if you only take that motivation, it will help you to find where you step your foot out the door in a metaphorical sense and do things now. Take responsibility for things and reach out into your life. And I wish you well. So I will see you in the next video. So Gemini, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, this is happening in your ninth house. It's a trine from your ninth house back to you. So relatively supportive, a sense of there's something you're willing to move into, ready to go in this direction. So it can be a very exciting time, and especially because you've got Uranus there in your first house, that is also creating a trine to this Pluto and sextile to the Jupiter that's here in opposition. But if we focus on the nodal axis, the focus for you right now is to move away from the everyday distractions, which I have to say is not going to be easy with Jupiter for you in the third house. That can include relationship distractions because Jupiter rules your seventh house and it rules your 10th house. So you'll want to get to this place of being a little bit philosophical and maybe releasing ways of needing to be in other people's story, drama, configuration in their relationship with you, and releasing some of that. Some relationships that come through you, some connections that you have with other people are going to feel like they just have to be that way. It's just very karmic. It's like happening with or without your desire for it, or any kind of sense of I'm making this happen, which is always true, but it's going to be more so now. And then with that North Node in the ninth house, there's going to be a bigger focus on your sense of why you're here. This picture of your ideal or your ideology that is behind what life is all about for you right now. This can include a new look at your guiding philosophy of life. I mentioned in the introduction Stoicism, and this can be one of the energies that is for you right now quite attractive, and where you're getting less, let's say, emotionally burdened or less bogged down in the everyday drama, which is a thing for Gemini. You do have Leo on the third house, so you're getting into the gossip and you're like, he said, she said, and all the drama of the third house every day. And you're getting much more philosophical and much more of a sense of, wait, this is not important right now. What is important is here. What is important is this higher vision for what life is all about. And this is reinforced by the fact that Saturn is in your house of the future. And you're getting this sense also, and that's been since last summer, 2025, or the middle of 2025. Um, this sense of you have a different role to play out in the world and in terms of the future that you want to see. There's a kind of a sense of maturity. There's a process of maturation that you are working through right now, in terms of how you reach into community, into your future, into the connections that you make with a vision. How do we do this? What network are you establishing? It's very, very helpful. Having Saturn there, Saturn ruling the ninth house, brings a lot of important people into your life, and that can include a teacher or guide or an astrologer. You can become one of those things, with a Jupiter in the third and the North Node there in the ninth. And so you can learn about these things, do that yourself. And the Saturn in the 11th makes you the reference points, that you become the pillar in the community. But you have to go through that process of refinement that is also required with both the North Node and Saturn, which is, of course, Saturn ruling the North Node at this time too, along with Pluto. And so where you're also perhaps putting a lot of attention is with reference to your father, maybe a father figure, teacher figure, religious figure, a guide, counselor, etc., or an elder sibling, because Jupiter South Node in the third house is also part of the connection with the 11th house, which is elder siblings, one older than you. The ninth house would be two siblings older than you. But the ninth house can also reference your father, and it can also reference this story between your father and his siblings. And that can be something that also becomes very important to you at this time, and all of which can impact your gains. Saturn also rules your eighth house of what you receive from other people through things that you haven't done. Like it's not can be inheritance, for example, or something like that. But there can be something that needs redefinition with Saturn there and a different vision or a different philosophy of what that represents, a different way of relating to all of those different things, a different way of relating to your extended family based on something that feels more important right now, more philosophical perhaps, more spiritual also. So Aquarius in the ninth house is that idealistic, ideological energy that you have, which is also what makes Gemini so kind of optimistic. It's like, look at this is the thing. This is the sort of guiding light, and it's air. It's all again the trine to you. So this can be something that is a real strong motivation for you that will be tested because of that Saturn in the 11th. So whatever, if you're setting out with one idea about how things are going to be, a year and a half from now, you're going to recognize, yeah, that got refined a little bit. That got tested and refined. And this is part of the Saturnian quality of the North Node, which is carrying that energy of Saturn, and then the Mars-like quality of the South Node, which is in the third house. So you might also find that you start to refine your relationships. Saturn is in the house of friends, friendships, networks, and so on. And Jupiter is in the house also of your community and your participation in groups of, people that you hang out with, people that are like your everyday folks or your neighbors and so on. And there can be just this recognition, well, if I've got this ambition, I've got this vision, I need to be more serious. I need to be on track with people who share the goal. And this will be the year and a half that becomes really, really strong, especially the first year with Jupiter there as well. Um, so yeah, make the most of this opportunity because it really is the people that you connect with and the things that you decide about your future and the way that you invest in your future and the people that you bond with in this space of a year and a half from now. Because also Saturn will be there until April 2028. They will be there for a long time. They will be your like serious people. So don't worry if people are falling away. Don't worry if there are relationships or even ideas or beliefs or ways of communicating, all those different third house things, if they're falling away, it's all fine. Don't worry. It can be, in the long run, the best thing that ever happened. Think in terms of balancing wisdom with what it is that you are actually dealing with, because with Jupiter in the third, you can be highly distracted. And the South Node is actually a blessing in that sense. It's like, look, don't focus your attention on this everyday stuff. Don't like waste your time. Don't scroll. Don't gossip. All that third house kind of waste of time energy. Focus on what you know and bring it to the table. That's Jupiter bringing the best, let's say, out of your skills, best out of your talents and the things that you can bring forward. And remember, Jupiter rules your seventh and your 10th. So connecting with people through what you can teach or what you can do or what you want to show as a skill. And that can also bring you a new social status or a new career role for yourself as well. But it is really a time of refining. Get back to basics, get into the place of really understanding your bigger role for a longer term. And I think you'll do very well if you focus in on that. All right, Gemini, I will see you in the next video. Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. So the North Node is joining Pluto in the eighth house, and Jupiter is being joined by the South Node in the second house. This is traditionally the axis of money, other people's money being the eighth house, what you share with others, and the second house being what you bring, what you have. It is going to be a time where you're going to have to practice the balance of giving and receiving, both financially, but also in terms of what you bring of yourself through this moment in time. With Jupiter there, there can be as much expenditure as there is receiving help and funding. And again, that will depend on your chart and look for the sun to recognize where that may be true for you. And then the North Node going through the eighth house represents also something very karmic that is happening in terms of marriage, What you share is also, of course, the marital bond, the connection. That's the eighth house. Saturn rules from the 10th house of social status and marriage, etc. It's ruling the seventh of relationship as well as the eighth of marriage. And so these will be very much topical for you at this time for about a year and a half, a big story for you. This can also include what you gain from clients. The seventh house is your business or clients. And it is also, again, with Saturn at the top of the chart, with Jupiter in trine to that from the second house of money. This is very much about restructuring what you receive, how you receive it, maybe a need to work differently or receive money in a different way, but there will be something coming your way in that sense. It's very karmic. It's not necessarily coming from what you produce, or it can be augmented by that, but there will be also something coming through. And again, I say that in principle, this is a general reading because that can change depending on your natal chart, and depending on the timing of things and your age and all those different conditionalities. But this is the theme, the bigger theme. The second house is also your family. So a lot of attention going on in terms of what supports you, and that includes your family. Everything to do with feeling of bonding or connection with the family, which can be there while simultaneously having either members of the family move on or your attention moving on from that and going towards what is shared with somebody on a more intimate level, or what you're dealing with on a level that is much more hidden from the family, like meaning family secrets or family patterns, family psychological issues, even crises around the family. This is a bigger ongoing story. It's not to say that you're going to have a period of nonstop crisis, but there will be at some point in this whole story an element of a crisis that will be hugely transformational and very karmic. And that's because the eighth house of transformation isn't just like you sitting on the couch one day going, I think I'll change. We only really change when we get a kick up the backside. And the crisis is the thing that is the motivation for change. And with the North Node, as I said in the introduction, there's such a lot of things that are coming through in that Saturnian way that is simply going to happen. And that will depend on your natal chart. And then the Jupiter in the second house, of course, putting a lot of emphasis on what you can bring to the table and recognizing also where your values lie. And with the South Node in the second house, there can be this detachment that's got the quality of Mars. It's letting go. It's not really, it's kind of done, or it feels like it's not an issue. It's not the most important thing, where you put a lot more emphasis on the value of intangibles, like that can be knowledge in the eighth house way, the occult knowledge, or it can be psychological understanding, or it can be intimacy. That's the eighth house notion of what is important. The other people's values are in the eighth house. Your values are in the second house. And so also recognizing how are you fitting into the schema of other people's values? Well, with Jupiter in the second house, it's not possible for you to lose your sense of values unless you're really overly materialistic, which would be the most painful way of going through this particular transit, but to recognize that there's this kind of a sense of foundation of clarity, let's say, that Jupiter is bringing. Remember, it's your exaltation ruler. It was just a year in your own sign as the exalted ruler of Cancer. In your second house, you're really, really clear of your values. And that is also the ruler. The sun is showing that level of integrity, which is, of course, the archetype, not necessarily what happens, but it's the ideal outcome for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. And so here what we have is that sense of I know who I am, I know my value, and I know what's important to me. And it's not about the stuff. It's not about the I'm okay with things moving on. I'm okay with this being different than before. I'm not focusing on that. I'm focusing on the intangibles, like Le Petit Prince. The things that are most important are invisible. And this is the North Node going into the eighth house with Pluto there too. And keeping in mind that Uranus is in your 12th at this time. I've just cleared the decks, so it's a little easier to read. So there is a lot in terms of your role and your stature that is going to be nourished by this dynamic of understanding and what you're receiving there. So there can be a lot that you start to work with in terms of intuition, information that comes your way, psychological understanding, potentially going through some rough patches where you look at stuff and go, wow, I wish that that hadn't happened, but look at who I am now, or look at where I am now, or look at what I can understand now and what I can work with. Because the North Node is for, that's really where we put a lot of our attention. We can't really deviate from that, even though it's only a transiting aspect. It's that kind of background focus that keeps pulling our attention into the eighth house dynamic. The eighth house is also the house of potential. It's about longevity. Some people call it the house of death, but really it's about longevity, what's there. And this can also bring a heightened sense of mortality, again, potentially through loss, potentially also through your own fragility that can be exposed at this time. That would be something. Jupiter rules your sixth house. If there is any self-indulgence, or if there's any kind of a sense of being overly attached to material comforts or overly attached to the stuff of life, that can actually burn you out, for example, that will be one potential here that is going to be benefiting from a higher use of that Jupiter, bringing you, because Jupiter also rules your ninth house, bringing you more wisdom, more philosophical ideas around how life can be. And that's also the stoic energy of Aquarius with Pluto and the North Node going through your eighth house. This kind of a stoic approach to, well, this is just the frame of reference for this particular lifetime, and not letting yourself get too bogged down into it. Saturn at the top of your chart, while it's retrograding until December, is going to help with understanding this process of what is your new role, what is your role with reference to authority figures or even a parent. And as I said, second house references the family, and there can be a letting go of parental figures. Now, it's ruled by the sun. Jupiter rules the ninth house, so this can be quite literal. It can be a father figure who's dying. In my case, that's literally what is happening right now, but that doesn't mean it's true for everyone. It's the way that my chart is aligning with so many things at the same time. But this could be one thing, and I'm not saying your father is dying. That please do not hear it that way. Think of it in the broadest sense. Which figure may be moving on, that it's no longer necessary for me to be connected in a three-dimensional way, to be connected with, but that connection becomes more ephemeral or more sort of esoteric. So a lot of focus also on your maybe mental or psychological health. Any issues of chronic health problems will show up and need to be cared for. The eighth house is chronic issues with health, mental or physical, and the sixth house is acute issues of health. Again, I'm not saying you're going to get sick. Please do not freak out. These are all potentials that can be there, and your natal chart needs to be seen for that. But your role in the public is being emphasized here, and it's going to be part of how you grow into something that is not necessarily tangible or visible to other people, but it's going to be a part of how you're showing up because of that Saturn showing you up as a figure of authority, or through the way that you use that awareness and authority that can be shown in public, or in your public role, or in your ambition, in your personal ambition as well. This can include a parenting role. All right, I think we've said it there, Cancer. All best wishes to all of you, and I'll see you in the next video. So Leo, very exciting time to be a Leo right now. You've got the South Node moving into your house of self, with the North Node moving into the house of the other. And so, as you've already had with Pluto being there now 3 years, and with Jupiter since the 30th of June in your house of self, where it stays until well into your next birthday season, the end of July 2027. And here we've got the South Node there, North Node in your opposite house until early 2028. So like March 2028, maybe it's even into April 2028. I'll put the date below because I forgot to check that. Here what we have is this really extended period of a shedding of attitudes you have to yourself or to solar figures in your life. And that can include your father, and especially so because Leo, you are, for good or bad, identifying who you are through how you felt about your father and how your father felt about his father, etc., 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 or your absent father, or your overly present father, or your idealized father. All of those different ways of relating to the father are unconsciously forming your self-image. And this is why Leo struggles often with how to show up, because there is this potential for wounding around that. This is the year where you really get to clear the decks and have a completely different relationship to yourself and therefore to your father. And this is a beautiful way of understanding how you're growing through this phase, through this time. Shedding aspects of yourself doesn't mean hiding. On the contrary, it means taking off the surface layer of acting. This is no longer going to be tolerated that you show up in a fake or like fake humble or fake blustery way, you know? So there's going to be a lot of this that is stripped away, and your relationships will take on a completely different flavor. This, again, as I said, can be very much about the father. You have Saturn going through the ninth house of the father, and that whole dynamic in a trine to you is really going to establish a completely different relationship to figures of guidance. Who's helping me? Who's on my team? Who's not? And if they're not, it's okay. Find a different team. Find your own resources with Jupiter in your first house. Build those resources. And Jupiter rules your fifth house of self-expression, but it's here in your house of self. So it's really where you get to say, no, I'm clear now who I am. And I'm clear, like, who's your daddy? That's almost like literally your motto now for Leo. And that's kind of a lifetime motto, Leo. That is kind of a story that is worth looking into. This notion of Leo being like fully formed and coming out with confidence and exuberance and all that stuff, that is very rarely the case. There's often a major process of self-discovery that Leo needs to go through to find that heart of the lion and to recognize who you truly are and to individuate from the father or the influence of the father or the absent father, etc., but not necessarily ignoring who your father is and the influence on you, but recognizing you're taking it with you forward in this new identity and finding your way through. You become that influence of the beacon, the leader, the effulgent self that you can be with Jupiter and Leo. Now the South Node going in there saying, strip away all the need to show up with these bells and whistles and the glory that you're looking for. Let it go and bring your attention to how others need you or how you show up for others, how you can be in relationship with new people in a new way. This is the bigger dynamic. And Saturn is also getting clear. It's part of this journey, especially with reference to relating. It's really about getting clear also what you believe to be true about not only yourself, but life itself. What is my purpose? Let's get serious about this. And who do I want to do that with? And that's part of the North Node saying you need different partnerships or a different way of being in partnership or new people to come in so you can do the thing that you're here to do. Because then later Saturn moves into your 10th house and makes you step up into it, right? That's April 2028. And by that time, the Node will be in your sixth house of work, different work, establishing something different, ruled by that Saturn, because it's Capricorn for Leo. So a big time, Leo. So don't think about this as like, oh, I bought a change. No, you just have to strip away what's not you. It's about, you know how they talk about Michelangelo and that block of marble, and he said he didn't want to create David out of the block of marble, but he took away everything that wasn't David to create it, right? Davide, you're the Davide. You're that. So you're chipping away everything that is not you to find David or whatever your name is. All right, Leo. So this is a big It's a big deal. It's once every, 18 and a half years to find yourself in the raw, most beautiful format, but you haven't had Jupiter there to help you with that. And nor had you had Saturn really guiding you with a stronger sense of what you're here for. So really work with this on a deeply philosophical level and get clear who is there, you know, to guide me in a way that is constructive. And in the absence of that guidance, I find it for myself. This is the journey also of Saturn in your ninth. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next video. So for Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, the South Node moves into your 12th house. The North Node moves into your 6th house of the everyday. And this 12th house axis to the 6th house can also help you repair any sense of over concern for being like overwhelmed with life, because now there's a feeling of being a little bit more phlegmatic around life, maybe a little bit more spiritual. That's the south. The south node is literally the best placed in the 12th house. This is one of the favorite, so-called favorite places for the south node, in the at least in the Indian tradition, to have that sense of letting go of what is no longer relevant in the house of letting go. The 12th house is what you're shedding. The 12th house is what you're ready to release. And it's only scary if you're holding on to the material reality as if it were the real reality. So it's really about trusting. It's about building a sense of trust and confidence in yourself. And the North Node in the 6th house with Pluto there already 3 years prepping you, getting you to see yourself and the way that you show up in a different way. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to work differently, your job, your literal day to day, all that changing. This can also be where the dynamic of victim martyr, or the feeling of being put upon, or the feeling of being sacrificed in your own story, is also going to be challenged, and you'll need to look at that and say, "Oh, wait, hang on, I'm choosing this." Keep that in mind. Put that on your fridge here, Virgo. You put that on your fridge. I am choosing this, and to recognize that any other attitude is going to keep you in the victim martyr dynamic. And there's always going to be a perpetrator happy to step in as long as you carry that energy of victim. And that can be your own self as the perpetrator, by the way. So notice that too. And so you recognize, no, 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 I have some new adventure to live through in this 6th house way. Is it about healing? Potentially. It could be about your role as a healer. This would be, for me, a very strong indicator because we've got Jupiter there. Also in the 12th house, it rules your 7th house of others. So it can be about finding a better quality of relationship with others, that you bring something to the table without having to let go of something of who you already are, or being the doormat. You're bringing something, and then Jupiter rules your 4th house also, what makes you feel secure. And that 12th house has that element of security through spiritual belief, faith, your faith in life itself. Trust life, trust in whatever. There's a beautiful saying that they have in the Arab world, which is trust in God and tie up your camel. So this is the year and a half to trust in God and tie up your camel. And you are the one who is responsible for the everyday stuff, but at the same time have the sense that there's a part of you that can just, I'm okay. This is going to be okay. This is me exploring who I am and how I need to show up in this particular life. And to see that there's a lot that you want to put in a new basket this period of your life. There's something you want to bring forth that is really coming through you. Saturn in your 8th house can be a brilliant opportunity to learn more of things that are hidden. It can be around everything 8th house, so occult studies, anything to do with psychological or medical studies, anything to do with counseling, becoming that for other people, or working with that through another person to improve your own quality of life and your own vision for your life. Um, the 8th house is other people's money, so it's a time when you cannot really rely on other people to bring money to you. It's not necessary, of course, that depends on your natal chart, but it is usually a time where you really have to learn how to manage your resources. And that can be through major change that is like a change of job, a change of position, a big tax bill, or something that is coming through challenge, because the 6th house and 8th house with the 12th house, those are known in Vedic astrology as the Dusthana house. Du means suffering, but it's not to say this is about suffering. It will only bring suffering if you really are attached, and that's the key word here, attachment to the material realm. And if you can see yourself in this non-attached way, recognizing that it's all change and it's all about learning, it's all of this part of the bigger school of life, you master it. And that's the Saturn in your 8th house, dealing with the invisible, dealing with fear, overcoming fear, and working through that to get to this better place in your everyday life, which is the North Node for the next year and a half. Getting to this place of contributing in a way that feels more aligned with who you are, but also with the South Node in the 12th, what you believe is important, what you really feel in your heart of hearts is important. And so this can also be where you recognize that there's a part of you that's been holding back, and there's more that needs to be stepping up in terms of doing or contributing in that sixth house way, which is practical. It's very practical with Aquarius there. That's what makes Virgo Virgo. That practical way, use that Pluto, this capacity for regeneration and transformation, bring that power there through this sense of, okay, I've got a task. I've got a task in this particular moment. And Saturn is there in your eighth house, testing. Okay, do you think are you scared? Are you worried about your security? What are you relying on? Is it solid? Are you bringing that to the table? And that, what I mean solid, I don't mean like, have you got cash stacked on the dinner table? That's going to be worthless and it'll go in a puff of air. What you're stacking here is the Jupiter in the 12th house that is ruling the fourth house of security. That's your trust and faith in life itself. Trust in the thing that makes flowers grow. Trust in the thing that brought you to this particular moment of your life where you're listening to this and recognize, I have this, it's inbuilt, and now I'm using that. I'm going to bring that forward in that South Node 12th house way. You're bringing something forward that is coming from an invisible place. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. There's a lot more that will come as we go through phase by phase what this all represents for each of us. And I wish you all the best. I'll see you in the next video. For Libra, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, this North Node is moving into your fifth house while the South Node moves into your 11th. And we already have this Jupiter-Pluto configuration in there, so you've already been feeling this energy. And now the bigger focus is on your self-expression, as Pluto has been challenging you to show up differently already for 3 years. And Saturn has been saying, am I with the right people? Are these my people? Is this the best place for me to put my energy? Is this person worth my time? Is this, that notion of filtering out the needy from the greedy? That's your Saturn in the seventh house, including where you are overgiving and where you are maybe over anticipating something coming through others. And here, what you're looking at is, no, I'm going to try and do what I need to do to find happiness, to find my creative expression, to find the role that I want to play in terms of reaching out into my creative entrepreneurial side or creative artistic side, and even including a new relationship with my children, a new relationship with what that might represent for me, not needing the approval of others or especially society with the South Node in the 11th house, but in a way trusting that that is going to come, especially with Jupiter there, through benefits. Jupiter is really helpful when it's in the 11th house, but focus on what you're bringing to the table in your special, unique way, in your creative way, in your joyful way, and having a sense that then people will automatically embrace what you're bringing, or the right people will, especially with Jupiter up there and Saturn clearing out the dross in the 11th house or in the seventh house of relationships. But you show up more authentically in this South Node Leo way. You're showing up more authentically and saying, I have something of worth and I don't care if it works for you. It's just what I'm bringing, take it or leave it. And this is where you're going to start to find yourself really showing up in a much more empowered way, using that Pluto for the best that it's been trying for 3 years to work this way through. And now you're going to really find your center. For some of you, you will be starting a family or expanding a family because the fifth house is children as well. It can also be sports, hobbies, what you do for just the pure joy of it. Fourth house is what you like, how you need to feel safe and secure and feel that sense of happiness. And the fifth house is what you do to express all of that. So there's going to be a lot of that attention towards what you want to manifest, attention towards what you want to bring forward through your through your you-ness, through your creative self, through your self-expression. This could be an artistic project. It could be a project that you've been working on that finally gets recognition, but it's coming through in a way that you're like, well, actually, now I don't care. Because I just love what I was doing. I was doing all this art thinking I was waiting to be famous, and now it's possible, and I really don't care because the focus is what I'm doing. And this is, of course, the ideal time to become famous. When I say famous, it doesn't mean like world famous necessarily. That will only be able to be indicated by your chart, but it can be that your talents and your gifts are showing up because the 11th house is the audience, it is the stage. With the South Node there, things can come through in a way that's just destined. It's like, okay, this is the time for that now. But it only will come through genuinely when you are, and with you feeling stable, when you are bringing your authentic self and your authentic expression of what it is that you want to bring out there. And it won't be something you can fake because that will be smelled a mile away, especially with the South Node there. That will not, that won't fly. So you really are being called to show up in a way that feels extremely expressive of self. And it's very, very supported. It's a trine to you. So this is something that I think you can actually really enjoy. You will enjoy a connection with people that feels much more valid and real and supported. And especially if you've been feeling isolated, because I could imagine the last year and a half or so has had you feeling a little bit isolated or a little bit like things are not really moving. This is where things can start to move in a direction that feels really exciting and kind of in alignment. And that's a really lovely place to be. And the Saturn retrograde cycle till December will help you to reconfigure the dynamics of business partnerships or relationships that need to be established in a way that feels more serious or legitimate, like who's in, who's out, who are my friends, who are not, who are the clients, who are not, who's my doctor, who's not, all those things. All right. And Jupiter, of course, rules your sixth house of work as well as your third house of contracts and your everyday and your communication. And so something about the 11th house is bringing you gains from those things, but it's coming through something that just has to happen. If this means that you have to let go of what you thought was going to be a job or what you thought was going to be something that was what you were working towards, trust it and say, thank you. I realize now there's more of me that needs to come through. Maybe you need to establish your own company at this time. That's just one way that this can work. Maybe you need to have more babies. You see, so this is, but yeah, maybe I need to express myself in this bigger, newer way, right? All right, make the most of this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, Libra. And Scorpio, this is very exciting because now you have a lot more attention here with Jupiter at the top of your chart and the South Node moving into the top of your chart. More of yourself is actually being sort of grounded in something that needs more attention through the interior experience of life or the literal interior of your home, meaning where do you live and how do you establish a new foundation, and pulling a lot more me time into the story. So your career is either on autopilot or it's not really the thing any longer. Your ambitions are no longer really that. It's not really that you want anymore. And Saturn in your sixth house is also part of that. It's reframing your everyday. That can be literally reframing the job that you do. And it's this sixth house Saturn that is also ruling the fourth house, putting a lot more attention on what you need to feel solid, secure, and happy. And it's what you're doing every single day. And the Jupiter at the top of your chart is how people are seeing you. They're referencing who you are, but also how you want to be seen and what legacy you want to leave. And so there's something here that will play into the role of your public face, your public figure, through the role of your job or whatever you're contributing, the effort you're putting in. Is this about parenting? It could be as well. But the South Node there says that this, whatever this role has been up until this point, it's no longer that. Whatever that means, is it going to be I'm letting go and walking away completely? Is it that you're retiring? Is it that you are um, you're being fired? In many cases, this can be the case. It's not guaranteed, and I'm not saying you will be. I'm saying this will be an example of using this configuration here, but it's putting you in a place where you recognize now more of my attention needs to come into my psychological and emotional health and well-being, connecting me to my family, connecting me to my roots, to my country of origin, perhaps, or just my homeland in a general sense, or whatever that represents, my home and homeland. This is not new in the sense that Pluto has been working with this for a long time. So you already are picking up on that, but now it comes to a kind of a peak moment, a peak force. And it does hinge on what you do every day. It does hinge on your health habits, on your overall diet habits. Jupiter at the top of your chart rules your second house as well, of family, food, the intake of everything, the way you consume anything. Jupiter rules your fifth house of pleasure too, so it can also be that things are showing up because of self-indulgence or because of a role within the family or because of a change of stature in the family. Is it that somebody in the family needs you more? You have to show up in a different role in the context of the family. You have to maybe take on a more paternal or maternal role in the context of the family because somebody else is not well or because there's a new dynamic between you and your day-to-day life that requires that. If there is any health issue, obviously take that seriously. And because Saturn is going to help you with that. Saturn is, we want the malefics in the sixth house because Mars Saturn in the sixth house of difficulty is going to give you the durability or the sense of determination and capacity to overcome. And so if there is any issue there, work with it, take it seriously because it's going to be part of feeding into this thing that says, how do I feel? How am I grounded? Am I happy? Am I secure? Am I where I physically want to be in the world? What does home feel like? What does my family feel like? My kids, my relationship to my family, my relationship to my lineage, all that stuff, the foundation of your life. And so it's a good time to be clear and serious and take responsibility for your kind of ins and outs of every day. And a lot of what's going to be coming through is just going to be kind of happening with Jupiter at the 10th and then the South Node in the 10th. You might be like, no, I'm done with this job, don't want it anymore. And then all of a sudden somebody comes along and says, hey, what about this? Do you want this job? Would you like to work over here? So it doesn't mean you're not working, but the opportunities will be there in different ways, in ways that you weren't really worried about or anticipating or expecting. And that's where you get the blessing of Jupiter at the top of your chart. And then the South Node is kind of like, wow, I didn't think about that, but there, I'll take it. And so it's actually quite a supportive aspect. Don't think of this as, strictly speaking, I'm not going to be employed or I don't have any goals or anything. It's just that it's less of a focus. It's going to be something that you are just dealing with. It's just going to come through the everyday. It's not such a big deal, as it were. All right. So make the most of this, Scorpio, and I will see you in the next video. Sagittarius, of course, Jupiter is your ruler, and it's in the ninth house with the South Node now. K2 is up there, and in the third house, so your everyday, the ninth house being your higher mind and your vision for your life and why am I alive, and the philosophy behind that, or the religion or the spiritual guidance that you feel is there for you. Your connection to fathers or father figures, teachers, teacher figures. Um, Connection to people who are foreign lands, foreign people. And that's all this. And so part of you needs to become more pragmatic in this, but still with this vision. So it's not like you let go of the vision. It's just that more of your attention has to come down to the third house of what feels more everyday, more practical. I need to deal with this thing. And here we have Saturn in the fifth house, which could represent something to do with children if you have them. It's trinal to you, so very supportive at this point, as is your ruler Jupiter. But the fifth house can be children in a other sense, like the more metaphorical sense of these are my babies. I'm working on this project. I'm working on these artworks. I'm working on business. I'm setting up my own business. That's fifth house of entrepreneurial energy as well. Saturn rules your money house, the second house, as well as the third house where we find Pluto and the North Node, which is all about exchanges and commerce and contracts and all these different things. So this could be that you have the inspiration to work, but you got to do the work. And that's the North Node here. You may need to develop new skills. You may need to work on how you're connecting and communicating your work or how that's being set up in a very practical way. This can also be, again, with the sense of like the everyday skills that you bring to the table. This is the gifts and talents and skills that you have that can include your verbal skills, your teaching skills, especially with Jupiter in the ninth. You're kind of taking it all in stride. It's not necessarily something that you need to focus in on. It's something that can start to flourish. It's something that can come through you in a way that's incredibly inspired, especially because your ruler is there and in the lucky house, the ninth house. The fifth house is lucky too, but Saturn is there. It doesn't mean you're not lucky. It means you got to work for that. You got to work for the luck. You will be lucky when you've done the work. And that will be, you'll look back and say, yeah, I was really glad I did that. I'm really glad that I put in the effort and time. So what can often happen with Saturn in the fifth, and especially with this particular configuration through the third and ninth supporting is that you establish a business which is based on something that you love to do, and especially something that you relate to that feels more inspired, feels more like high-minded or important or more like you, as you're aligning much more with who you are in terms of your belief and so on, and what life is all about for you. And so if this is about establishing a new business or establishing a hobby that feels really solid, or you're training for the Olympics or whatever, the World Cup, whatever. This is really solid. It's really, really good for you. You're going to get a trine from Saturn and Jupiter at the end of August. We'll come back and do a video on that, but that will really be beneficial for you, especially if you have planets between 10 and 20 degrees, especially 10 and 15 degrees of Sagittarius. So really, really helpful. And of course, Jupiter is ruling your fourth house also of home. So there may be something that is about what you want to do in terms of travel or going abroad or traveling with a purpose, going to a conference or mm, meeting people through those kinds of things that has this feeling of where you might discover where it is that you want to be, where you want to live, where you're feeling an element of security or an element of happiness that comes through that. Um, Being happy because you're traveling, for example, that's not too far from what a Sagittarius would naturally be inclined to feel anyway, but that would be all the more so here. But it's much more focused with practical stuff. It's not so much the necessarily the travel, holiday travel, traveling with a purpose. Alrighty, so I'm going to leave it at that. I think it's a great year. You've got a lot of support in a trine and sextile to you coming through Sagittarius. I think you're really on the up and up after a couple of more challenging years. And I wish you all the best. See you in the next video. Capricorn, Saturn is, of course, your ruler. It's in the fourth house, in your house of home and family and responsibility for your own happiness and well-being and the foundation of your life. And we find also the North Node in your, ruled by this same Saturn, in your second house of your values and your self-worth and money and what's at your disposal and income and things that are coming through your possessions and property of all kinds, because Saturn is in the house of immovable property like land and things. And movable property is the second house. It's like stuff that you own that you can carry around or put in a box or whatever. And then we have Jupiter and the South Node in your eighth house. So there can be money that is coming through you from another person, from a marital partner, for example, that just brings extra support. It can be money that comes through from an inheritance, or there's a dynamic around money that you are just receiving and but you're having to manage. So with the North Node in the second house, something about what you're doing requires you to manage what's going on. You're having to manage your resources, you're having to focus in on that, manage your own resources, including your own physical resources, what you have in terms of support. Do you need more support? This would be also the Saturn in the fourth. That is about what do I really need to feel secure and happy. Maybe it's about having staff or a friend or a family member help you and support you more. This can be very, very strong for you right now. And that would be a good way of recalibrating yourself right now so that you can really live through that sense of your own value. I am worth having a massage. I am worth having a cleaning lady or whatever the story is for you, right? I am worth having resources at my disposal. I'm worth spending money on myself and not always on other people. That would be a good Capricorn thing to think about because you tend to always put your attention on what other people need. And of course, that's the archetype, right? It's not the case by case. It'll depend on the natal chart, but that's often the case. Um, Coming to a new place of your self-worth or a focus on that, and where is that maybe lacking? Has there been something coming through your relationship to your lineage, your family, your people, your homeland? Is there something that feels like you've been measuring your self-worth based on who you've come through, like who your family is, as opposed to who you are? Recognizing with the second house North Node that there's a whole lot about money that is maybe requiring a different attitude. The North Node in the second house is going to put a lot of focus on resources in a general sense and money particularly, or what's in the bank and so on. And you may find that you're actually ready now to find a more spiritual attitude to all of that. The South Node in the eighth house, where you might start to realize you can look at fears, family patterns of needing to control around finances, needing to control purse strings, needing to control like who gets what how big a piece of the pie, it's all that stuff where you can really let go of those patterns. And with Jupiter in the eighth, it's really a brilliant time for looking at yourself psychologically, for reviewing anything that might have to do with your emotional, psychological needs and foundations, any patterns that are in the family. Saturn, your ruler, is in the fourth house, which is sometimes can be heavy. It can feel like, damn, it's just like one thing after another. It's like a lot of work. It's a lot of commitment. It's a lot of responsibility. And so finding somebody you can talk to, and that's another way of finding your own value. And Jupiter rules your third house of communication as well as your 12th house of spirituality. So this would be a time also to, look at the deeper elements of things, the hidden mysteries of life, and start to question some of that, and to work with that, and maybe working through your intuition in a different way as well, because the fourth house and the eighth house, 12th house are connected to that, your deeper intuition. Right. So yeah, make the most of this Capricorn. It's a great opportunity. You having your ruler in an angular house, a powerful time already. But then here it's an opportunity for you to really see your self-worth or the value of things in a completely different way and operate from that basis. All right, make the most of that. I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Of course, the North Node comes into your house of self now with the South Node in the seventh house. So there's a whole new way of relating to yourself, a whole new way of seeing perhaps your own value. And this will depend on your natal chart, but this may be something that you find difficult. A way of showing up that feels more like you're bringing yourself into the story more. Especially with Jupiter in the seventh, you're going to be much more clear who is worthy of your time and effort and presence. Your ruler, Saturn, is in the third house. And so something about how you're connecting with people on an everyday level or through communications, how you connect with people, how you speak to them, maybe even your skills, what you're bringing to others, the skills that you bring, with your ruler in the third house, can be something that you overlook or underestimate. And now you're looking with the North Node in your first house, you're kind of going, I do have a lot to bring. I do really have some of myself that I've been leaving behind. Pluto will have also helped you by recognizing where you've been giving up power. So what I said in the introduction is very important for you to hear in terms of like the power stuff, like who's your daddy, who's the one that you give power to, where do you enter into power struggles, partly because you haven't really embodied your own inner strength, and that's the Pluto going through the first. This is an extended period of major transformation with this particular moment in time saying focus on yourself, let go of any need to be so attentive to others' needs. It doesn't mean people won't be there in your life, especially with Jupiter there. You're likely to have quite a lot of interactions, but it's about changing how you interact with other people. With the third house, also with the Saturn there, you can become more serious in the way that you approach conversations with people, more serious about what is true and real, speaking much more from the heart, as it were, speaking in a way that feels more authentic. That's very much Saturn and Aries, getting to that place of authenticity. Um, and then saying what you mean and meaning what you say, basically. That's kind of that as well. So there's going to be an opportunity, perhaps even in the month of July, where you're tested, perhaps in the dynamic with a specific other person or with people in a general sense, and you get to realize, oh, this is what this pattern is going to help me learn. And the North Node is, remember, where we move into something that we're not really comfortable with. It's often the thing that takes us in a new direction. So we're going to be testing the waters of who you are for a year and a half. And, Aquarius is a very highlighted energy right now. So there's going to be a prominent sense of being yourself, but in this context of something that's new and very different. So again, with that Saturn in the third, it's like, who am I authentically? Am I showing up authentically in my everyday life, in the way I converse with people, in the way that I speak to people? Am I bringing my gravitas and my wisdom to bear in the third house way? And what have I got to teach? That's Saturn as well. Saturn is the taskmaster. Jupiter is the teacher, also in the house of the other. So others can be your teacher, and you can also be the person. You can be the teacher to others. And this is an expanded sense of that role. Jupiter rules your house of the future, the 11th house, and the money that can come through gains of what you're doing, and especially in terms of who you're relating to. If you're connecting with the right people, you can find gainful benefit from that, even if it's in the form of moral support. And then, of course, Jupiter rules your actual money house, your second house of self-worth, and so on. So if the person across the table from you is not helping you see your light and your beauty and your inherent capacities, it's not the right person, and that person will disappear. But with the South Node there, don't worry, that's going to be the opportunity of this opportunity to get real clarity. And the first opportunity will be in November, then again in April next year. I'll come back and talk about that, where it'll be really crystal clear. Am I in the right couple? Am I with the right business partner? Am I hanging out with the right people? Am I seeing people correctly? Am I seeing myself correctly? This will be the whole story. Um, and so lots to learn from there. Bring yourself to the table with confidence. Use those skills that you might often dismiss as somehow not important, and recognize that it is. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, your ruler is in the sixth house of your work, your everyday, your health, and so on, along now with the South Node. And so there's going to be a lot of change around your work, around how you're showing up, around the sense of what your everyday life feels like, with a lot more emphasis here with the North Node in the 12th house on perhaps what is going on behind the scenes in your own sort of unconscious, being more aware of your spiritual guidance, your spiritual sensitivities, or even foreign lands, foreigners, people from abroad. Jupiter is your ruler in the sixth house. So if there is something here about your work taking you to a foreign land, this would be a great manifestation of this. Saturn is ruling that from the house of money. So you may have to work abroad. You may have to take your work to people, or 12th house is your people who are foreign, who benefit from your work. So a lot more work coming through people in foreign lands, or coming through people you never actually physically meet. That's like online work, for example. And Saturn in the second house is saying restructure how you earn your money, restructure how you use your time and how you use your energy and your resources, your personal resources, but also financial ones. And Jupiter is going to bring lots of capacity and possibilities. In opposition to Pluto, there can be this testing, and this is part of the axis of the 12th house, 6th house, which is a theme of yours anyway, the Virgo Pisces axis, of what you are giving or giving away, what you are sacrificing of yourself, what you are sacrificing and not practicing receiving as well, or feeling obliged to do things like that. Um, and then also with the North Node in the 12th house, you might start to recognize, oh, wait, I'm doing that. That's a pattern. That's how I'm showing up. I'm blaming other people, but I realize, oops, it's me. I'm doing that. So questioning the assumptions, questioning the behavior that we call the self-undoing aspects of like what operates from old patterns, or what operates from hidden fears, or what operates from habits, including addictions of any kind, if that's true. I mean, substances are the second house. So it's consumption of everything. It's alcohol, food, drugs, whatever you consume, stuff, TV, all that stuff. And it's that Saturn ruling the 12th house as well. And it rules your house of the future as well, to keep that in mind. And where the North Node and Pluto are right now, if there are any issues with addictions, or if there are issues of patterns that you realize, whoa, that's just, it keeps coming back. It's a self-destructive story that keeps repeating itself. And I'm still refusing to look at it. You will now need to look at that. And this will be an opportunity with Jupiter in your sixth and the South Node there, an opportunity to shed patterns that are not helpful. And Saturn in the second house is saying, do you get your worth? Are you seeing your worth? Are you bringing who you are genuinely to the table? Or are you shortchanging yourself again and again? Again, this will be different depending on your natal chart, but overall, this is a reference to that. So there's a capacity that you have to work more. It doesn't mean give away more. It can be working smarter as well. This is especially with Saturn in the second, working in a way that is much more Piscean in the North Node, Aquarian way, where you're working much more in terms of what you can bring through a place that you're putting more attention in the mystical or hidden aspects of your life, even in the sense of a very literal use of that 12th house, which is about faraway lands or places that are marginal and hidden. That can include clinics, it can include meditation centers, retreats, and things like that. Maybe more of your attention goes there, more traveling, more going to places of deeper reflection, consultation. It can be that you're working there, or it can be that you're doing work on yourself and you're helping yourself advance. So Jupiter in your sixth is not only your ruler, but it rules your 10th house of career and your vocation and how you're showing up and even parenting and this kind of thing. So that can also be where you're realizing, okay, there's a different way of being so that I can be seen differently and I can show up differently and my ambitions are taking me in this direction, but the everyday work is to be done. It's got to be done, but it's got to be done differently for the next year and a half because whatever this is that you're feeling now in July 2026, it's not really working any longer. It kind of feels done. Now, this doesn't mean you have to throw in the towel and give up what you're doing. It means that it's about either how you're doing it or the ins and outs of what you're doing are going to change. And this is over a process of a year and a half. But with your ruler there at the same time, it's going to bring you a lot of benefit. It's going to bring you opportunities. It's going to bring you what you need. Um, and you can be busy, but with a different attitude, it feels like it's okay. This is fine. So notice that give and take of feeling that victim martyr dynamic that may inherently keep rearing its head, saying, I don't have a choice in this. I don't have a say in this. You have to keep coming back to that 12th house that says, wait a minute, that's an old belief. Or that's a feeling of, I don't want to be here now. I don't want to be in this energy now. I don't want to be in this world right now. I want to be somewhere else. And realize that that feeling of needing to escape is actually possibly taking you further away from what you want ultimately. And this Saturn in the second house is saying get clear of your self-worth, get clear of where you need to, in a way, that's a material house. The second and the sixth houses are Artha houses. These are houses of substance, and this the Jupiter ruling the 10th from the 6th. That's this 2, 6, and 10 are Artha houses of substance, of the three-dimensional material of life that we need to work with. So Saturn is saying, get clear on that. You can spiritualize that. You can make your everyday very spiritual with the South Node and Jupiter in your sixth house. But you can't ignore that there's also a reality. You need food on the table, the rent or the mortgage is to be paid. You can't drift off into a commune and get away with it. So you may want to, and you may try, but you will be brought right back to this reality. And that's a good thing. So notice that that's going to be helpful. And that's going to be with Saturn, especially the next 6 months between now and December, as it's retrograde at this time as well, just retrograding until the 10th of December. And you get to have this new look in at what it is to manage the three-dimensional reality while being fully Piscean in your spiritual self at the same time. This may be also around family obligations. You may need to step up more than you ever did. And that can also be about showing up or feeling like nobody's really there for you. You're the one that has to show up for yourself. If this is not about connecting with family, but that not in the way of I'm a victim. It's like, I got this, I can do this because you can, because that's what this is saying. All right, Pisces, I wish you all the best and I will see you in the next video. Thank you everyone for being here and I will come back very soon with more to share. Bye for now.